Our next presenters are Kelsey and Jessica Haupt from St. Johns County, and they are doing a presentation entitled Tie-Dye.
Welcome to the tie-dye demonstration. Here you will learn the inner workings of creating your very own unique, one-of-a-kind tie-dye t-shirt. My name is Kelsey Haupt, and this is my sister, Jessica Haupt. And we are both in the St. Johns County 4-H Doggone Crazy Club. And we're also very involved in our county, district, and state level, holding positions on each. We have been in 4-H for 6 years, and this is our 4th time doing a demonstration, but our first time competing in the category of leisure and arts. As we start, we think it's very important for everyone to understand exactly where the art of tie-dyeing came from. Through our research, we have found very interesting facts about how and where tie-dyeing came about. For example, most people believe that tie-dyeing started in the 60s, and they associate tie-dyeing with the 70s and the hippie age, when in fact tie-dyeing began in an era of ancient history, with forms of tie-dyeing that have been practiced in India, Japan, and Africa for centuries. Like in India, they have a tie-dyeing technique that is known as Bainhagi, and this is the oldest tie-dyeing tradition we know that is still practiced today. Their design involves dots, in which many small points are tied with thread before merging them into the dye. And in Japan, their tie-dyeing techniques include the shabogi, with the stitch dye, fold dye, and pole wrap dye. The shabogi have been used for many centuries to make beautiful patterns on cloth for elaborate kimonos. Kimonos are long, wide-sleeved Japanese robes worn mostly by women. And now that we have a better understanding of where exactly the art of tie-dyeing came from, let's move on how to create a tie-dye t-shirt and all the types of dyes and designs there are. The materials that you will need include 4 different tie-dye colors, warm to hot water, salt, rubber bands, gloves, and a piece of white cloth or t-shirt. You'll need to start by preparing the piece of cloth by washing the fabric to remove any finishes, softeners, or stains, which we have already done with all of our fabric today. Next, we'll need to prepare the dye itself. But first we need to place on gloves so that we can protect our skin from the dye. Next, with any 8-ounce package of dry dye, you'll be using 4 cups of warm to hot water. And it is also recommended that with dark colors, you use double the quantity of dye. We will also be using 1 cup of salt to help produce the best results. The salt allows the dye to penetrate in the fabric better. Kelsey will be mixing the blue and orange color, using 4 cups of water to 2 packages of 8 ounces of dye with the blue dye because it's a dark color, while only using 1 package for the orange. While I will be mixing the yellow and green dye, using 2 packages for the green and 1 package for the yellow. Jessica, did you know that there are over 10 different types of dye that you can use when dyeing fabric? Really? I've heard of a few, but never that many. I know there are fiber reactant dyes that are bright and long-lasting, and that they're easy to use. And they're also the most permanent of all dyes. And there's a direct dye that are in the class of hot water dyes, used for silicone fibers, like we're using here today. Yes, those are a few, but there's so many more, like the all-purpose dyes, the acid dyes that are used to dye protein fibers. There's also the natural dyes and the back dyes, which is the ancient class of dye called indigo. And there's also dispersed dyes that you use on polyester and nitrile dyes, which are the 2 cold water dyes that are usually used to dye cotton. Wow, that is a lot. But now, let's move on to the fun part of tie-dyeing, creating your design in the t-shirt. We will show you 4 easy and wonderful designs that you can do. We will show you the swirl, the rings, the lines, and the off-axis pattern. At this time, you may remove your gloves. We're going to be starting with the swirl design. With your t-shirt, you're going to lay it flat on the table, and in the middle, you're going to pinch up and start swirling around into a circle shape. And once the circle is formed, you're going to start rubber banding back and forth, back and forth. You want a rubber band so that you keep the integrity of the circle intact. Next, I will show you the rings design. This is quite easy. At desired places on the t-shirt, take a little pinch of the fabric to create a bubble of sorts, and tie at the base with a rubber band. To create a ring inside a ring, take a larger piece of the fabric to create a bigger bubble. Take one rubber band and tie at its base. Take a second rubber band and tie in the middle. This technique will create a ring inside of a ring. The more rubber bands you use on the t-shirt, the more white that will show up. The tighter the rubber bands are, the more distinct the lines will be. And this is what your Swirl Design t-shirt should look like when you're done rubber banding. The next design we're going to show you is called the Lines Design t-shirt. Again, you're going to lay your shirt flat on the table, but sideways. And you're going to start folding back and forth from top to bottom. When you're done rubber banding, you're going to rubber band the top and the bottom of the t-shirt so you can keep those folds intact. When you're done rubber banding the top and the bottom, you're going to simply start rubber banding down. You can do as little or as many rubber bands as you would like down the t-shirt. But the more rubber bands that you do, the wider your shirt is going to be, and the tighter you make your rubber bands, the more distinct those lines are going to be. And this is what the Rings Design t-shirt could look like when you're finished rubber banding. Next, I will show you the off-axis pattern. Lie the shirt flat on the table, and take the left corner of the shirt and scrunch into that little bubble like we did before, and tie off again with a rubber band. Run your hand down the shirt to pull it tight into a straight line. Then continue rubber banding about an inch or so apart, but again, you can do as close or as far apart as you would like. To iterate one more time, the tighter the rubber bands are on your shirt, the more distinct your lines will become. And the more rubber bands you use, the wider your shirt will be when you're finished tie-dyeing. And this is what your Lines Design t-shirt should look like when you're done. And this is what your off-axis pattern t-shirt will look like when you're done. Now that the t-shirts are wrapped into the designs that you have chosen, it is time to start to dye our shirts. But first we must replace our gloves to once again protect our skin from the dyes. Then, choosing whichever color you prefer, place that piece of fabric that you want to be that color into the dye and hold for about 30 seconds. I will start with my Rings Design t-shirt and dunk into the yellow color first and hold for 30 seconds. And I am just going to start with my Swirl Design t-shirt, and I've decided that I'm going to place half of it into the blue and hold for 30 seconds. But you can do as little or as much color as you would like. Next, I think I'll put my Rings Design t-shirt into the green and hold for 30 seconds. And I'm going to put the other half of my Swirl Design t-shirt into the orange and hold for 30 seconds. Another great thing about tie-dyeing is that you can do the same design hundreds of times, and each time your design can come out completely different. I will now move on to my next design, the off-axis pattern, and dunk it into the orange color. And I am going to move on to my Lines Design t-shirt, and I have decided that I'm going to place the whole thing into the blue. How we have used tie-dyeing in our 4-H careers. For the past 3 years, we have taught a workshop on tie-dyeing to our district's intermediates and juniors at our annual Youth Adventure Weekend. I've already moved on to my second color with the off-axis pattern and dunked it into the green. Now that we have finished tie-dyeing our shirts, it's time to start simply taking off the rubber bands. As you begin to take off the rubber bands, you soon get to find out what masterpiece you have created with rubber bands, a piece of fabric, and some dye. We have pre-done some t-shirts for you today to show you what they would look like when they're dry. And this is what our Swirl Design t-shirt would look like. And this is an example of the Rings Design t-shirt. As you can see in the middle, there's a ring inside of the ring. And this is what our Lines Design t-shirt would look like. And finally, the last pattern we showed you here today, the off-axis pattern. So you can see the focal point is in the left, bringing your eye down. We have used the sources www.pbutch.net and www.unsolvedmysteries.com. Are there any questions from the judges?
Did you do the shirts you have on?
Yes, we did.
How many shirts did you make?
Well, we've practiced a few times, so, and then we did at the county and the district level, so that's 4 each there, so that's 8. And then So we've made quite a few.
You turned this into a business.
Or maybe you have.